You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV from Toronto, Ontario. I'm Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. Today, a conversation about anti-Muslim racism and the Freedom Convoy. But first, some news headlines. Western journalists under fire for racist coverage of Ukraine. Report shows dramatic increase in climate change impact budget. Lack of progress for Afghan refugees disheartening, say Canadian lawyers. Algonquin College names Bursary after Ottawa Muslim refugee. And now the details. The Arab and Middle Eastern Journalists Association, or AMEJA, yesterday called out Western journalists for their racist coverage of war in Ukraine. Social media also brimmed with condemnation of those journalists who refer to Ukrainian refugees as civilized and European, implying in contrast that refugees fleeing war from Middle Eastern and North African countries are uncivilized. AMEJA says that this rhetoric perpetuates and normalizes Orientalist and racist understandings of conflicts in the Middle East, Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. CBS and Al Jazeera English later apologized. Canada is spending almost $2 billion annually on managing climate change impacts. This is up from an average of $0.4 billion in 1983, according to a new report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC. The report says that wildfires pose the greatest threat to Canada. By 2080, they predict losses to reach $459 billion. Canada's fishing industry faces disappearing species. Farmers across Canada will encounter water scarcity in the growing season. The IPCC urges policymakers to address climate change now. 21 Canadian law firms have written an open letter to the federal government, asking for the creation of a cabinet committee and a streamlined process for Afghan refugee immigration applications. After meeting with government officials and learning that the number of applications processed each week is low, a couple of law firms began a letter-writing campaign with provincial bar associations across Canada. They drew attention to the issues preventing Canada from reaching its pledge to bring over 40,000 Afghan refugees. Lawyers Carla Potter, Adi Mohadja, and Hugh Megan, in an article for the Lawyers Daily, note that this delay undermines the urgency of the Afghan situation. Algonquin College's nursing program launched a new grant, the Samira Saba Kifl Practical Nursing Bursary, named after an Ottawa-based Muslim immigrant. The donor was inspired to fund the award after Kifl's exceptional care of her mother and others in a nursing home, and Kifl's own story of hope and determination. Originally from Eritrea, Samira Saba Kifl came to Canada in 1981. She finally realized her dream to be a nurse in 2018. Kifl said that she also received bursaries that helped her finish her studies. This grant will reward and aid healthcare workers enrolled in the practical nursing program at Algonquin College. That's it for the news. The Freedom Convoy protests have been moved from occupying downtowns and from blocking border crossings, but clearly the issues that animated them are not gone. We have with us today someone who attended the Freedom protest. Assalamu alaikum, Stephen Zhou, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Now, you attended a convoy protest. Describe what you saw for us.
I attended the downtown anti-mandate so-called Freedom Convoy protests some weeks ago, which numbered about 500-600 people, covering a large, significant swath of downtown Toronto for about a day or so. And of course, the overall grievance is vaccines and primarily mandates. And they say that this is really about freedom of choice, and it infringes on Canadian charter rights and that kind of thing. But if you walk through the protests, what you see is a whole number of things, primarily unhappiness with Trudeau, various ideas about the Liberal Party being negligent of their part of the country, the prairies, and also some extremist anti-Semitic elements as well, who feel like this kind of their far-right worldview exists comfortably with the convoy as well.
Some people might feel sympathy with the whole mandate vaccine passports and all the force that's been around that. I think a lot of people aren't happy with that. But are you suggesting that the only people who went out to attend the convoy protest were those who might have other views, not just protesting against the mandate system?
The issue of mandates, of how that should exist with balance with civil liberties and so forth, is very, very much an issue that reasonable people can disagree over and debate over. The problem is that ever since the beginning of the pandemic, the most active actors on this issue, particularly against vaccines and mandates, have been well-known xenophobic groups and individuals who have gotten together in the past few weeks and months to organize this convoy. If you look at their main coordinators, main organizers, their loudest supporters online and elsewhere, these are individuals who are not from mainstream politics or anything like that. Some of them may have brushes with mainstream politics, but they are, by and large, actors from Canada's far-right universe with a history of statements of xenophobia, Islamophobia, and sometimes anti-Semitism.
Social movement scholars, when they look at what rouses people to action, like I'm sitting at home and then I decide to get in my truck and drive across Canada, there has to be some kind of spark or inciting incident. So clearly, if they've been disillusioned with the mainstream politics, this has been years in the making. Do you think it was the vaccine mandate system that they say, like the straw that broke the camel's back? Or do you think this convoy would have been inevitable on a different issue?
Well, I think there are two main things. Number one, the pandemic itself provides the main opportunity, the primary platform, if you will, for Canada's far right to have reemerged, taking advantage of the vaccine pandemic mandate centered issues. Those are legitimate, kind of particularly the mandates. These things are things that and issues that reasonable people can disagree over. And also Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, etc., parts of the country feel a great antipathy towards Ottawa and the Liberal government. That's just a perennial Canadian theme in politics, it seems. These two existing dynamics have been taken advantage of in a way by an active far right group of people or actors and groups who have taken advantage of these realities and made it their opportunity to gain public legitimacy and to show force that they can make themselves a national item.
Do you think that the Liberal government has handled it well, invoking this emergency act that, for the first time in Canadian history and declaring the occupations illegal?
Perhaps the Emergencies Act, the unprecedented invocation of the act, was not necessary for the RCMP, for police forces to come in and disband these protesters who have a right to protest, but their breaking of the laws, civil disobedience in general is meant to elicit arrests and such traditionally to show that the state is not doing the right thing, and it generates a certain level of attention for people who commit the civil disobedience. In this case, it was also harassment. It was also added on with harassment of people, neighborhoods, honking into the night. So just bad behavior in general. Whether or not you needed the Emergencies Act to disband it is a debate, but there needs to be a national inquiry, a study into exactly what led up to the invocation of the act, how far-right groups have been able to do this, and why national security agencies are playing catch-up, essentially.
Well, that's was going to be one of my next questions. I mean, in 2011, Prime Minister Stephen Harper called Islamicism the biggest threat facing Canada. I'm wondering now if he's changed his mind.
Well, Mr. Harper has been out of politics. He's been trying to make more money in private corporations, sitting on the boards of various companies. I don't suppose that his views, now that he doesn't have to be in front of the camera speaking to people who he wants their votes from, that he's diluted his views or anything like that. He's appeared on various right-wing programs like the Ben Shapiro show, claiming various things. And I don't think Mr. Harper or people who support him and that kind of right-wing Canadian politics or political outlook really believe that there is such a thing as far-right threats or white supremacist groups who are organizing and pose a threat to a Canadian public safety. So, I mean, if that is the case, then he probably, I'm speculating, I've not talked to him or anything. He probably still believes that, quote unquote, Islamicism still poses number one public safety security threat to Canadians.
There are some really weird parallels that have been going on when the protesters, and there were some people engaging in violence, and the organisers were saying, we're a peaceful protest, it's just a few of us, don't brush the whole group of us with these little extremists who are part of us. It just sounded a little bit like Muslims trying to say, we're peaceful Muslims and don't blame us for what the extremists are doing. Did you have any kind of, I don't know, what do you think about this?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good question. Most Muslims who are asked again and again to condemn violence by other Muslims who are engaging in extremism. Most Muslims who do that in our mainstream communities are not themselves organizers of various acts of extremism or things that condone extremism or spaces or community spaces that condone and breed extremism. That certainly exists, but it's not the large swaths of our community. The difference is that far-right organizers for this convoy, such as Tamara Lick, such as BJ Dichter, such as even Pat King, who is an open, proven, documented white supremacist, these people are who they are with their histories of xenophobia, of Islamophobia, career Islamophobia. They cannot claim that they have ideologically have never ever had anything to do with ideas or activity and political organizing that never touched anti-Muslim animus that now is translating into violence against various marginalized communities. And
we have to leave it there. Thank you for your insights, Stephen, for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
You've been watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Stay tuned for the next episode. Stay safe and God bless.